Hello everyone, welcome to Studyphilia Education. Today we are going to study reconstructing ancient Indian history. And our first unit here is geographical regions and sources. Before jumping into our first unit, we should understand the term ancient Indian history. How historians came up with this kind of division, ancient, medieval and modern. So let's go back. Utilitarian James Mill wrote a book called The History of British India. Now, what's a utilitarian? Utilitarian were those historians who lived in Britain but wrote about India. And James Mill especially focused more on chronology and sequential narrative. So, in his book, The History of British India, he divided Indian history into three parts: Hindu civilization, Muslim civilization, and British rule. But we know that history is much more than religion. Therefore, modern day historians try to do away with these problematic divisions and they reclassified Indian history. They reclassified Indian history into three parts: ancient India, medieval India, and modern India. Now, we don't divide, or historians don't divide history on the basis of just dates. We don't choose a date to draw a sharp line between two periods in history. तो अब हम एंशंट इंडिया को मिडिवल इंडिया से अलग कैसे बताएंगे? हम डेट्स ईयर्स यूज़ करते हैं हिस्ट्री में, बट अप्रॉक्सीमेट डेट्स और ईयर्स होते हैं, और सिर्फ उन डेट्स के बेसिस पे आप किसी एक पीरियड को दूसरे पीरियड से अलग नहीं कर सकते. ऐसा नहीं है कि एक दिन इस तारीख को एंशंट इंडिया ख़त्म हुआ तो अगली तारीख को मिडिवल इंडिया शुरू हो गया, नहीं. So we take into account many characteristics such as the major social, economic, political and cultural changes that took place, and on basis of that we divide the Indian history into ancient India, medieval India and modern India. So under this theme we are going to study issues like geographical regions of India, sources of ancient Indian history, the tools, technology, society, and art of the Paleolithic people in a regional context. But then this question comes that if we are studying history, then why do we have to go through so much geography? Because history without geography is largely incomplete. That is why history is regarded as a study of humankind, history of humankind as well as history of environment. It is difficult to separate these two. That is why before jumping into history, we study the geography of a region. The main purpose behind describing the physical features of India is to acquaint you viewers with the topography of different parts of India. What is topography? Topography is the study of the forms and features of a land surface like rivers, mountains, etc. When we study this field is known as topography. Now let's come to India. So the physiographic of India is divided into three main parts, that is Himalayan uplands, Indo-Gangetic plains and the peninsular India. Himalayas are the youngest fold mountains on earth. And why are they called the youngest fold mountains? Because their size is still increasing. And the Himalayan snow feeds three river system of our country, which are the Indus, Ganga and Brahmaputra. Then comes the Indus Plains, which saw the first civilization, that was the Indus Valley civilization. And then comes the Gangetic Plains, which saw the second urbanization, the first urbanization occurred in Indus Valley civilization and the second urbanization occurred near the Gangetic Plains. Then comes the Peninsular India. The Peninsular India is defined by the flow of four major rivers. The area where these four rivers flow, it's called the Peninsular India, and these rivers are Mahanadi, Godavari, Krishna and Kaveri. These rivers created a nuclear area in the plains and the deltas, and this nuclear area enabled the sustenance of cultural growth through ancient, medieval and modern periods. So basically this river created a nuclear area. Now what is a nuclear area? We describe a region as a nuclear area which is transformed by the historical and cultural developments into perennial centers of powers. Those areas are called nuclear areas. So, rivers such as Ganga, Brahmaputra, Indus, and their tributaries Mahanadi, Godavari, Krishna, Kaveri, Narmada, Tapi, they all created various nucleus areas. And these nuclear areas, they they became this center of cultural growth and sustenance throughout different periods, not just one period. Through ancient, medieval, modern, we see different regions coming up in these nuclear areas. Now let's get a little specific. We'll study the Himalayas first. So the Himalayas can be divided into three broad units, that is Eastern Himalayas, Western Himalayas and the Central Himalayas. The Eastern Himalayas, this part of the Himalayas lies between the Teesta river in the west and the Brahmaputra river in the east, and stretches for a distance of about 720 kilometers. Eastern Himalayas are also known as Assam Himalayas. The Assam Himalayas shows a marked dominance of fluvial erosion due to heavy rainfall. Then comes the Central Himalayas. There are 800 km between river Kali in the west and river Teesta in the east. The Great Himalaya range attains maximum height in this portion, so we see some of the world's most famous peaks in the Central Himalayas like Mount Everest, Kanchenjunga, Makalu, Annapurna, etc. The Lesser Himalayas is known as Mahabharat Lake in this region. In between the Great Himalayas and the Lesser Himalayas, there are Kathmandu and Pokhara lacustrine valleys. We saw Central Himalayas, Eastern Himalayas. Now let's come to the Western Himalayas. They lie between the Indus in the west and the Kali river in the east, and they stretch about 880 km. Spread across three states of Jammu and Kashmir, Himachal Pradesh and Uttarakhand. Now, when we see historically in the Central Himalayas, we see trade contacts between India and Tibet across its frontiers. And when we go to the extreme west, you can see the Hindu Kush range, which extends southwestward from the Himalayas, and this range extends deep into Afghanistan, covering ancient Gandhara. So geographically and culturally, Western Afghanistan has affinities with Eastern Iran, but Southeast Afghanistan had been culturally close with Indian subcontinent right since the Neolithic age. So if Afghanistan is in the center, the Western Afghanistan had close contacts with Iran, and the eastern part of Afghanistan had close contacts with India. What helped here is the Khyber Pass. This Khyber Pass historically has been the gateway for invasion of the Indian subcontinent from the northwest. The Khyber Pass has long been one of the most important trade routes and strategic military locations in the world. Alexander the Great marched his army through the pass in an unsuccessful attempt to capture India in 326 BC. Almost 2000 years later, Babur did the same, but he succeeded. Babur succeeded in establishing the Mughal Empire in northern India after coming through this pass from Afghanistan. During the Kushan Empire, the pass became a key trade and migration route between India and China. Routes like this Khyber Pass and the Kabul River link, or routes which run through Afghanistan like the Gomal Bolan, these routes have brought in traders, invaders and varied cultural influences all through the historic times and even before. Greeks, Shakas, Kushanas, Hunas and others made their entry into India through these routes. Buddhism and other aspects of Indian civilization entered Afghanistan and Central Asia through these passes. So that was the Himalayas. Now let's come to the Indus Plains. The Indus Plains are divided into two parts, Punjab and Sindh. Today, Punjab is divided between India and Pakistan, and the word Punjab means 5 rivers. And these rivers are Ravi, Bias, Chenab, Jhelum and Sutlej. These 5 tributaries of the Indus flowing across a vast alluvial plain have made the region the breadbasket of the subcontinent. What does the word breadbasket means? Breadbasket of the subcontinent means a region that provides cereals and crop for the entire country, because this region, particularly Punjab and Sindh, they were so much fertile that they produce, and they still produce, cereals and crops for the entire country. Then comes the region Sindh. Sindh is situated by the Indus and produces large quantities of rice and wheat. Two of its major cities, Harappa and Mohenjo-daro, are located in Punjab and Sindh respectively. When we look at Indus Valley civilization, the major cities, Harappa and Mohenjo-daro, are located in Punjab and Sindh only, and there was a reason, because these areas were situated near rivers, they were extremely fertile, so they helped in creation of a nuclear area. Then now we come to the Gangetic northern India, the Ganga plains. The Ganga plains are divided into 3 regions: upper plains, middle plains and the lower plains. The upper Ganga plains are found in western and central Uttar Pradesh, largely include the Doab. What's the Doab? Doab are 2 rivers of Ganga and Yamuna. So this region is also famous for the painted grey ware culture that historians and archaeologists found here, and this region was also famous for the pulsating activity in the later Vedic period. When we say that western and central Uttar Pradesh largely include the Doab, we mean that at the confluence of Ganga and Yamuna, at the terminal point of these 2 rivers is Prayagraj, and the Prayagraj, also known as ancient Prayag, was a famous nuclear town. Then comes the middle Ganga. The middle Ganga plains correspond to eastern Uttar Pradesh and Bihar, and this is where ancient Kosala, Kashi, Magadha were situated. It was the center of city life and money economy and trade since the 6th century BCE. When we look at the map, we see that the upper and the middle Ganga plains are geographically defined by the Himalayas on the north and the central Indian hills on the south. But the lower Ganga plain are co-terminus with the province of Bengal. The wide plains of Bengal are formed by the alluvium brought by not only Ganga but Brahmaputra also. Now let's come to this main topic, sources for the study of ancient Indian history. Sources are very important for the reconstruction of the past. We have a variety of sources for reconstructing the history of ancient India, but broadly they are classified under 3 main categories, which are literary sources, archaeological sources and foreign accounts. But sources can also be divided into primary and secondary. All archaeological artifacts recovered from the earth or written documents in the form of temple records, inscription of palm leaves, pillars, rocks, copper plates, etc., all of them, they are called primary sources. जो सब हमें धरती से मिलती हैं, जिनमें कोई मैनिपुलेशन नहीं होता है, they are the primary sources. Then comes the secondary sources. The historians who write articles, books about these sources, the primary sources, the articles and books written by historians, they become the secondary sources. Now let's come to the literary sources. The Indian literature contains themes such as religion, theology, cosmology, cosmogony, magic, rituals, prayers and mythology. Of course, there are problems associated with dating these texts since their period of composition and compilation differ by a wide margin. We'll study ahead, we'll get to know this, that the date these composition are written and the date that they are compiled or the period in which they are compiled, there is a huge difference. Vedas, Upanishad, Brahmanas, Shastra literature, epics and Puranas etc. deal broadly with non-secular themes. We will be studying these different categories of early Indian literature as sources of Indian history. So the literature all this Arthashastra, Ramayana, Sangam literature, Buddhist literature, Jaina literature, poetry, drama, biographies, all of them become the sources for reconstruction of ancient Indian history. Now let's come to the Vedas. Vedas are the earliest known literature from the Indian subcontinent in Sanskrit. The word Veda is derived from the Sanskrit root word vid, V-I-D. The word vid means to know, and thus Veda means knowledge. They are oral literature. We'll study the difference between this oral literature, which has Shruti as well as Smriti. We'll study the difference ahead, but Vedas are oral literature. They are heard, traditionally regarded as heard or revealed text. So when they are saying that Vedas are heard text, मतलब सुने गए हैं, so they become Smriti text. Sorry, not Smriti, Shruti text. So let us first see the difference between Smriti and Shruti. So the Smriti texts are those texts which are memorized, and the Shruti texts are those texts which are heard. So when it says that Vedas were the heard text, सुने गए थे, they become the Shruti text. The Vedic literature consists of three different classes of literary works, which are Samhitas, Brahmans, and Aranyakas. The sutras are also there, but we'll study them later. First, we'll focus on the three main categories: Samhitas, Brahmanas, and Aranyakas. So, Samhitas are collection of hymns, prayers, incantations, benedictions, sacrificial formulas, etc. The Samhitas are further divided into Rigved, Atharvaved, Samved, and Yajurved. Then comes the Brahmanas. The Brahmanas are voluminous prose text which contains theological matter. Theological matter means matter on God. Theology means the study of God, especially observations on sacrifice and the practical or mystical significance of the sacrificial rites and ceremonies. Then come the Aranyakas, which means forest text. The Aranyakas contain incantations of the forest hermits and the ascetics on God, the world, mankind, etc. Now comes Sutras. There is this another category of text, Sutras, which form the part of post-Vedic literature. So Sutras have been further divided into Smriti and Shruti. Smriti are those which are memorized and Shruti are those which are heard, part of oral tradition. The Sutra texts are manuals, like manuals on rituals, like Dharma Sutra, one of the most famous ones. These are books on instructions on spiritual and secular law, and they are the oldest law books. We can say that they are the oldest law books. Post Sutra text, we have Smriti text. Smriti text are those which are memorized. So Smriti text constitutes Manu Smriti, Narad Smriti, Yajnavalkya Smriti. These are composed between 200 BC to 900 CE, and they prescribe duties for different varnas. Brahman, Vaishya, Kshatriya, Shudra, all these varnas, they describe their duties as well as the duties of the kings and their officials. They set out rules for marriage and property. They also prescribe punishments for persons guilty of theft, assault, murder, adultery, etc. Then comes the two famous epics, Mahabharata and Ramayana, also known as Itihasa. Itihasa means thus it was or narratives. Both the epics took centuries to come into shape, and the period roughly assigned to them is 500 BCE to 500 CE. The Ramayana of Valmiki appears to be more unified than the Mahabharata. Some of the sites mentioned in the Ramayana and Mahabharata have been excavated by archaeologists. Ayodhya excavations have revealed settlement going back to the northern Black Polish ware period. Hastinapur, Kurukshetra, Panipat, Bagpat, Mathura, Tilpat, Bairat have been excavated, and these date back to the painted grey ware period.